Welcome to Real Talk with Nivoda, and today we'll be talking with Wes Tucker, the CEO of Tracr, and we'll be covering where diamond traceability is today, where it's evolving, and how you can get involved. Hey Wes, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I was pleasantly surprised when we jumped on the pre-call, and it was the Dave Sutton I went to high school with in South Africa, which came as a complete shock.
That's unbelievable.
And now we're sitting in London talking, which is amazing, and talking about this cool industry we both work in.
Yeah, I remember you said, oh my God, this is cool. This is going to be the easiest call I'm going to have all week. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey that got you here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And I guess it all did kick off when we left high school. I went to Cape Town. I studied engineering. I'm from South Africa, as you know, and then you can probably hear from my thick accent. I studied engineering and ended up working on the mines. So I've always said this Tracr job is a bit serendipitous because one of the mines I built was the Karawe mine in Botswana. And in the pursuit of work-life balance, I moved to a company called Accenture. They're a big tech consulting company. They shipped me straight back to the Congo to do some work with Glencore. And then I moved across in about 5 years ago now to the UK with Accenture to look after Anglo-American. And then 3 years ago, I took on the job to run Tracr, which is the world's foremost distributed diamond blockchain platform for tracing diamonds. As a retailer, you can take rich data that Tracr's collected all the way through the value chain, how it was discovered, where it was cut and polished, the impact that it made all the way through to the retail store, and you can present whatever story you want to the consumer.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, man. And what are you doing here with Tracr? What's the idea here?
A little over 7 years ago, we sat down and we formed this company funded by De Beers to look at how do we provide the story of every diamond in the natural diamond industry, where it's discovered, how it's manufactured, all the way through to consumers. And our vision was to create an open industry platform to help tell the natural diamond industry story using technology. And that's really where we are today. So we've come a long way, and there's quite a few little bits and pieces that make up the platform. But we're still core to our belief that we're an important part of the natural diamond industry to try and support that storytelling that we think consumers really do desire.
How many people do you have in the company and where are you based?
Yeah, so we're a small company. There's about 47 of us in total. We're based in Farringdon, which is in London. We do have a small team in India as well. Obviously, it's an important part of the diamond industry out in India. So we've got quite a span of people in the industry. And one of the privileges of this job is we deal with every part of the diamond value chain. So we have a lot of people that understand the ins and outs of not just technology and sort of policy and auditing, but also the actual natural diamond industry.
What do you want to offer the industry to be able to do together?
We work predominantly with two types of producing companies. On the top end are the larger producers. So De Beers is obviously one of our foremost partners. We've just announced Mountain Province has joined the platform out of their mine in Guachique. And then we have Petra, who are testing as well. Their CEO recently announced that. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we work with a company called Gemfair, which helps artisanal miners get fair price for their diamonds in Sierra Leone. And those diamonds are also on the platform. So we're kind of dealing with two ends of the spectrum. And how we do that is we implement physical hardware in the point of sale for those producers, and they scan every individual rough diamond and load it onto the blockchain platform. And they create basically a digital twin and a silhouette of that rough diamond that we believe is completely unique. And so it is the birth certificate of those diamonds. So if you're a producer, what it means is you can load that piece of information on the platform. You can then load information about the investments you make in the communities, whether that's in Botswana or Sierra Leone, and you can put that information and those stories on the platform. And then in the future, you can add the carbon impact, the water impact, all of the other data that you want to load. And then you'll know that that data is secure within that birth certificate as it flows further downstream. Does that kind of make sense as to how, as a producer, you would utilize the platform?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. That obviously forms part of the end report. So what happens next when it gets to a manufacturer?
Well, and this is what I think is quite cool. So, we probably, I would say we're one of the most successful platforms across all industries in that we have about 20% of the world's diamonds getting loaded on the platform every month, which puts us quite far ahead. But I think the unique challenge in the industry is that midstream is incredibly complex. So rough diamonds are cut and polished into polished diamonds, but they're also traded in multiple different ways. So if you're a manufacturer on the platform, you will purchase diamonds from one of the producers that already sell diamonds, and Tracr will allocate from the producer to you that box of parcel of diamonds. And when you receive that, you can then load each individual diamond on your instance of Tracr. So you can say, I've got this rough diamond, I want to register it. And Tracr will transfer the digital ownership from the producer to the manufacturer. And we have algorithms that we can implement to, when they scan that diamond at the manufacturer, we can marry the two diamonds together. So we can individually identify where that diamond came from in the original scan, which is quite cool. We call that kind of the rough to rough match.
So after you've certified that with GIA, and then it's from the manufacturer to the retailer, how do you see that part of the journey happening?
How it works today is the manufacturer can share the unique Tracer ID with their retail customers. We work with online platforms. We're starting to work with Nivoda as well. So you would be able to go onto Nivoda and find diamonds that have Tracer IDs available, which means that story is available in the future. And that really bridges the gap between manufacturers and retailers. You can transfer digital asset ownership of that diamond. So we've sort of created the digital asset equivalent of your polished certified diamond. And if you sell that diamond, you can also transfer the digital asset across. What's quite useful about that is even if manufacturers transfer with each other, that wholesale market is quite well supported to allow provenance to continue. So when a retailer gets a stone, even if it's not directly from the manufacturer to the retailer, it's touched a few hands, the provenance will be intact for the retailer to then be able to tell that story back downstream.
Do you have any stats around how many people are actually asking for like diamond traceability certificates, and how this is going to help our retailers be able to sell more product?
For sure, and it's a really important question, and it's not something that we try and oversell of the fact that people are running around in stores asking for origin. They're really not. Research about 2 years ago said about 20% of consumers in the US that walked into a store to buy a diamond jewelry, make a diamond jewelry purchase, about 20% of them asked about origin. That in the more recent surveys is sitting at about a third, so it's definitely increasing. But I think, when we talk to our customers, we don't tell them that they should do it because they need to be reactive to their customers' questions. I think the key thing for us is there is a good story to tell in an industry that is facing some headwinds. And so if you adopt the technology to be able to actively tell a positive story about natural diamonds, not only will you get the net benefit of better pricing, but also you'll differentiate yourself in a market that with lab grown and other things coming on the market has become quite commoditized. So our sort of core belief in the first instance is that 20%, 30% is going to keep moving. Consumers want to know where their bananas come from and their coffee comes from. I'm fairly certain that over time, such an important purchase like diamond jewelry, they're going to want to know that you know where these things come from. And that's the role that Tracer helps support. And then second to that, if you think about the Gen Zs and the millennials that are coming through, they're looking for a much richer story. They're looking for more interaction around the impact of their purchase. And that's Tracer's job, is to provide the richness of information required to be able to tell a much more meaningful story about where your diamond comes from. And so whether you are worried about regulatory things, or answering questions of a consumer, or actually just want to be on the front foot of a trend that's increasing, that's kind of where Tracer plays in both of those outputs.
So on those trade restrictions, this is a big one, isn't it? So what's happening at the moment? What's happened in March? What's going to happen in September? And how do we see this going forward?
I need to always just say that Tracer never set out with the goal of being a tool for sanctions or trade restrictions. It was always a tool that would more broadly support the natural diamond industry. I think the whole industry's been a little bit disrupted by this concept of sanctions and trade restrictions. And it brings it to front of mind that origin is important and where things come from is important. And so in this, Tracer is part of the solution. We're one of the leading platforms out there. We work collaboratively with everybody in the industry, but we're quite clear that we are not the only solution. This needs to be more of a framework that helps deal with the problem. And so what's happened in the last little while is there's a little bit of a difference in the industry, and we must always differentiate between sanctions and trade restrictions. And so sanctions have been put in place by the G7, and those are usually on companies or individuals. And what the G7 as a group of countries has come together to say is they want to implement some form of trade restriction. And so from the 1st of January, but from the 1st of January and the 1st of March in the EU and other G7 countries, the import of Russian diamonds has become illegal. And those diamonds are, whether they originate in Russia or whether they were cut and polished somewhere else or cut and polished in India, whichever way it looks like, those Russian origin diamonds are now illegal to import into the G7. And more importantly, deals with grandfathered goods or diamonds that were 10 years old or 20 years ago. How does it deal with that as well? So needless to say, it has created quite a lot of uncertainty in a market that's already dealing with quite a lot. But I know there's been a huge amount of lobbying and discussion and engagement with the government to try and understand how best the industry prepares itself for that.
Trace is not just about origin, right? But also the consumers are asking about what the impact is, like what's happening with carbon and water. How are you showing these?
Yeah, it's a really good distinction, right? Because we talk a lot about, at the moment in the industry, we talk a lot about origin, but actually it is more about provenance, which is that entire story where it was discovered all the way through, and then the data that we can capture. We try to talk a lot about the positive impact, but I think we need to be transparent and honest about the maybe not as good impact, which is things like how much carbon did it take to produce, how much water did it use, etc. And so I think that's where Trace is uniquely placed, is that, you know, a good amount of the carbon used in the creation of a polished diamond comes in the mining aspect, right? And that's no secret. And so why we begin at the source, why we load the diamonds individually at the source, is it allows the producer to accurately and in a trustful way allocate the amount of carbon used per diamond onto the platform. And that's something that we're working on at the moment to go downstream. But what that would mean is using things like LCAs, which is life cycle analysis, you could be able to get to the world where those diamonds are coming out at polished at retail and have an accurate, audited carbon footprint of the diamond at the retail store. And I think that's really powerful, because it means we can tell a true and trusted story to a consumer rather than maybe trying to tell a story that's not exactly accurate.
Yeah, we need to showcase that to the end consumer.
Yeah, exactly.
People aren't seeing it as the old Blood Diamond movie and
Yeah.
what the story was there, but more about how it's actually helping.
Totally.
Many countries.
Totally. And Leonardo DiCaprio has, I think, done everybody a bit of a disservice in that movie specifically. When I joined the industry, I didn't quite realize that every single diamond is hand cut and polished. Like what thing that you buy today still exists that has gone through that fundamental transformation by an individual person whose family is supported by the industry, who sits on a wheel and individually cuts a diamond in a really good factory with really good facilities, you know, with good employment and labor practices. It's a fantastic story that we don't get out there enough, I think.
So it's not just about the origin. What are the impact stories, and can you tell us a bit about those?
Yeah, it's quite interesting if you think about the amount of investments that are made in communities, not just in the countries where diamonds are discovered, but also in places like India and that where they're manufactured, and some of the local beneficiation stories. So some diamonds are discovered in Botswana and beneficiated or cut and polished in Botswana. And so a lot of these companies, they spend a lot of money on conservation. In a country like Botswana, it's free healthcare. I speak to a lot of US consumers specifically that ask the questions about where they come from. And there's free healthcare, there's free education, there's, you know, a huge number of tarred roads and infrastructure. All of that's built by the diamond industry. So what's powerful about Tracr is we can package all of those investments and we can load them onto the platform as stories that flow with the diamond. So, you know, to your question around independent retailers or any of the other users on Tracr, when you get that diamond on Tracr, that story already has all of that positive impact, from land conservation to schooling, investment in women in science and engineering and technology, etc. All of that is packaged and put on the platform and flows downstream, which is really powerful that you can use technology for that.
That's amazing. Exactly what the consumers are asking for. What's the point of this being blockchain? Does it need to be? And can we do it without blockchain?
You know, I get asked a lot, like, what is blockchain? I think the industry uses the term a lot. There's still maybe a lack of understanding of exactly what it is. And one of my previous colleagues, David Prager, had a great analogy. And his analogy was that you're at the baseball game and you're with your partner and you're sitting there and you decide you're going to get engaged. And so you get engaged. And then, you know, the Red Sox win or whatever, and you have a big night and you wake up in the morning and they are very excited about the fact that you're engaged. And you say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not engaged. And it's a bit awkward because it's just the two of you. And then imagine you're at the same baseball ground and you sort of turn left and right and you've got two friends there and you get engaged again and the two friends are witnesses, and the next day you have the conversation and you deny it flat out, right? And the friend of your partner, they say, well, no, it happened, and your friend says it didn't happen, and you're still stuck in the same thing. And so where blockchain differs is, imagine now that you propose on the Jumbotron, and so the entire stand saw you getting engaged, and it is absolutely true. And not only that, they all wrote it down individually and they stored that. And when you wake up in the next morning, it's almost irrefutable, the fact that you got engaged. And so that analogy works quite well for blockchain in the diamond industry. The reason we want to do it is we want to ratify choices and ratify decisions as a collective industry, and we want to make sure we write that down so there's no sort of question about it the next day.
So we've heard a lot about the concept of the single rough node, where all of the rough diamonds that are outside of Russia pass through a single location so that they can be certified. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there? Is that a possibility? How it's going to be in the future?
Yeah, it's quite a complex one. And how we understand it is when the EU legislated their import restrictions, which had the sort of effect on the 1st of March, the sunrise period, and then the 1st of September for certain size categories, the proposition was that there'd be a robust G7 traceability certification mechanism. And part of the proposition that was put forward is this concept of a single node, a rough node. And the idea behind it, as far as we understand, is that non-Russian rough diamonds that would like to be imported into the G7 in the future, either in rough or polished, and this is where it gets complicated, would need to pass through the single node first for verification and certification, and then they could go and be cut and polished somewhere else. And when the polished came back again, they'd carry that certificate through. We've been working on traceability for 7 years. We spent quite a lot of money on it. It's quite complex to be able to handle these transitions and the movement of goods. The challenge the industry's put forward is a single node is it's quite difficult for the volume of goods we're talking about to be able to flow. But I think more importantly, and definitely something that we strongly believe in, is that if you look at the producing nations, countries like Botswana and South Africa, Namibia, etc., that have been producing diamonds for a long time, we believe that they should have the right to certify the origin of their own diamonds. We have these things like the Kimberley process that have been around for, I think, almost 2 decades, that are a mechanism to do that, to certify that diamonds come from a certain origin, etc. And I think there's been a lot of pushback in the industry on the concept of the single node, not just because of the added logistical costs to it, but also the fact that producing countries sort of lose their ability to certify the origin of their goods.
So when we're looking forward into the future, where do you see it going in 5 years? What's going to happen?
In the 50s, there was a young female copywriter who wrote that line, that sort of eternal line, "A diamond is forever," which I guess catalyzed the industry that we all work in, right? It is the thing that made us who we are today. And I always reflect on the fact that there have been a few attempts, but nothing that is quite that again. That was in the 50s, right? So over 60 to 70 years, you've got an entire couple of generations that have come through. And I think about the new millennials, Gen Zs, the Zalfas, if you will, those generations coming through, they haven't had that catalyzing moment in diamonds. And so I think for me, the big risk to the diamond industry is we deal with everything we're dealing with now, and we sort of stabilize the ship and we carry on. But we're losing the next generation. We haven't captured their imagination. And when we think about Tracer, we think about, we're a digital company, we're a tech company, we're about digital diamonds, about immutable diamonds, we're about storytelling and honesty and transparency and truth. And I think a lot of that does resonate with that new generation. So, if you think about, and it's kind of hard to see 5 to 10 years in the future, but if you think about trends like the metaverse, trends like blockchain, trends like NFTs, memberships, etc., is there a world where we're trying to get the next generation of consumer excited about diamonds because they have them both in the real and the physical and the digital world, right? They can have their necklace and their ring and their engagement ring, etc., in the real world, and they can have the exact equivalent immutable version of that is non-fungible in the digital world. And is that the thing that through social media we're telling stories about impact and importance and origin and social justice and all of these things? Is there a mechanism where we support the next generation of diamond consumer that are fearless and they want to know where things come from and they don't want to be lied to and they want absolute clarity? What's the way that we as an industry come together and use the technology we have, not just of Tracer, but of other platforms out there, to be able to tap into the passion of that generation, that they start loving diamonds the way that the generations before them have? Because I think without that, I think there's an entire gap that's going to be created in the next 5 to 10 years that is not going to then be able to support the continuation of the industry, which is a little bit scary when you think about it like that.
Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about how retailers can afford to cover their bills is what we're talking about.
Well, that's not existential. That just sucks for them, right?
Yeah, that's a shift in business model, and like we help people make those shifts. We sort of see it as the online only guys all want to open stores, and all of the guys that have stores are talking to us, please can you help me with a website? So I see all of this becoming just one business model when we look 5 years into the future. Like that's going to be how it works, and it's going to be 90% of business starts with an online search and it will come through, and but it will be booking consultations in store, right? And I think that's really the important part, because the 25 to 40-year-old confused male shopper is not looking to inspect any diamond at all. What he's looking for is someone who he can trust in, like to give a fair deal and to give him something that his partner is going to be proud to wear. And I think that's the important part to remember. I personally don't have in my mind that I could propose with something else. I couldn't propose with a car or a holiday or a phone or something. It would have to be a ring, and for me, it's a diamond ring.
They go intrinsically together, right? Like, sounds silly, but like love and diamonds are like one and the same. You know, engagement and diamonds, jewelry and bridal, etc. It's all one and the same. And whether that's lab grown or not is a different conversation.
I think we do have a bright future to look forward to.
Yeah, I hope you're right, and you are onto something. I mean, it is in the, what do they say? It's in the zeitgeist of what it is. It is intrinsic in everything that we do, jewels and excitement, and you know, it's there, right? My sense is that there is something more just at an engagement level in the language that the new consumer is understanding, and whether that is not to get them to fall in love, because maybe they are, but maybe if they have too much choice, that we allow them to be clear on the purchase they're making. And I see that as very much a social thing, like social media, something we haven't, as an industry, we haven't quite cracked yet. We can't, I don't think we do a great job at communicating through social channels. We're very good at communicating in billboards and newspaper articles and other media, but that social thing is a bit different. Like, and I struggle with it because I don't quite get it innately like the new generation do. But I still think there's something there we need to do. If we don't get that right, it's just too much noise for the consumer, right? There's too much noise out there that I think is dangerous if we don't get that truth and honest message out.
Just that clear signal.
Exactly right. It's kind of cut through the noise, which I think the industry can do. And I think diamonds they've just got such a good story to tell that it's kind of on us to just get that clear message through.
No, thanks for coming here, man. That was an awesome chat.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I can't tell you how special it is to sit with a mate, 20 odd years in the making, and here we sit having this conversation. So thanks for having me as well. It's been brilliant.
Thank you. And we'll see you on the next episode of Real Talk with Nivoda. Thank you.